Hello all, I'm Chris, and welcome to Props 3D. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to make the Blamcon Vyper, an interactive 3D printed light gun that works with modern computers and flat screen TVs and monitors. You can get the models, firmware, and parts list from the Blamcon website in the link below, along with resources to help you build, like interactive 3D models with embedded parts, an interactive wiring diagram, and a downloadable manual with a parts list. Everything, including the firmware, 3D print models, and build guides, are free to everyone for personal use. Blamcons run on Props 3D's own Blamcon operating system, which works on PC, Mac, and Linux. Before we get started, let's just take a quick look at the Vyper and check out the features. The Blamcon Vyper has a working recoil, rumble motor, RGB LED, and joystick. It has a forward A and B button, along with a assignable pull-to-reload magazine. The rear sight can be rotated between a peep sight and an open sight, and it has a 2-spec removable Picatinny rail. As you can see, I got a real optic on here. It uses a 2-stage adjustable microswitch trigger, and the stock is removable. This way you can swap out the bars here for players of different sizes. The Vyper uses a locking GX16 cable, so you can jump around freely or swap light guns on the same cable. We do sell parts kits, completed Vypers, and accessories on the Blamcon store, as well as if you are a DIY enthusiast, you can source all of the parts yourself. The only part that can't be easily sourced is the Blamcon core, but we do have a workaround on that if you check out the website. The Blamcon core is essentially a light gun on a chip. It has all of the components necessary to drive recoil, rumble, and also has through-hole soldering points for everything you need to get going on a light gun. It also features a Raspberry Pi Pico W on board. We ordered the PCBs for the core from PCBWay, which we're happy to say is a sponsor of our videos. When PCBWay approached us to work together, they didn't actually know we've already been a long-time customer. It integrates easily with Eagle and KiCad, so all we have to do design our PCBs, send them to PCBWay, and we get a knock on the door a few days later. Again, we do have a workaround on the Props 3D website, so the core is entirely optional if you want. And with that, let's get started building the Vyper. First, let's take a look at the 3D prints. This is our end game. This Vyper has had basically no post-processing at all, with the exception of taking off the support material, and is basically the exact same thing you see here, but in red. So only a few of the parts require support material, and here is the support orientation I use for all the parts. Now, on the Blamcon website, I do have pre-supported G-code files for many popular printers that you can just download and push print. But I have to warn you though, these are set for my print settings and my filament. We exclusively print with Matter 3D Performance PLA. This filament is made locally for us in Canada by some brilliant chemical engineers. It is by far the strongest PLA I've ever used and has negated the need for other more toxic filaments like ABS. I would highly recommend this filament, and this is what our G-code files are tuned to. But really, most PLA plus filaments will do you just fine. I print the entire Vyper with 5 shells and 7 shells on the top and the bottom, which equals about half a kilogram of filament, and completed gives a 1 kilogram weight, which I think is ideal for playing. It gives you enough heft and doesn't tire you out. You can print it thicker or thinner to taste, of course, so it's very easy for you to customize this to be the way you want. I print 2 of the parts, the trigger and the actuator, solid, as they take the most stresses. Otherwise, I do also recommend you do those 5 outer perimeters and 7 top bottom for the charging handle, just to give it the correct weight. If you print it lighter or heavier, you may get a different action on the recoil. Again, not a single drop of glue required for this entire build, which is really important as we plan on releasing some upgrades and mods for this. Oh, actually, let me show you the first mod. One sec. This beauty here features a mock suppressor mod along with a wide-angle lens adapter. This allows you to play really close. This was painted up by Mike, and Mike will be actually making some tutorials with us soon, showing you how you can do awesome paint jobs like this. Ooh, one more Mike paint job. The man is a master, and I look forward to his videos. So let's separate the parts that need support material removal and get right on that. First off, the frame. I use little mini chisels like this, very easy, and a couple of pairs of pliers. I like to start by gently prying around the support material. This is probably a good tutorial for support material in general. Just lightly cracking it off where I can. If you need to, check out the models to make sure you're not removing or prying on anything that doesn't or shouldn't be pried on. Pretty much everything here, like on the inside, it's not going to be as clean as the outside. That's just the nature of support material. If you have a printer that does multi-material, obviously you don't need to do any of this. But if you look at the other side, it does not matter at all. The only thing that matters is this travel path. This is where the actuator and the charging handle travel. So just make sure you trim it up a little bit. It's nice and clear and there's nothing blocking it. I like to also take this little bit of a chisel or any kind of chisel, just draw it across, just ensures it's flat. And then take a little knife and just make sure there's no lips or any edges. There, first half done. It's the same thing for the second half. Again, being careful of the pieces in here. You can kind of see them outlined. Oh, pops right off. That's for mounting the core. And we'll just go through and repeat the same process. Interesting point of note, I had a support setting that I could take this whole thing off in just basically one pop. Then after I upgraded, I actually reset my slicer and all my settings and lost it. But I actually think this is a good thing because this is the stock bamboo settings using the hybrid tree support. So this is a good indication of what it would take to remove these cleanly using standard supports. If I just snap the whole thing out, it probably wouldn't be much of a tutorial, would it? All done that. And the rest is really easy. I like taking a narrow chisel. I should be able to just pop it out. Oh, a little bit left on the top. Here's a tip and or trick for you. If you do notice some discolored white spots, just take a lighter and just go whoop, very lightly. And it just removes all of that discoloration. Again, perfect example. You see that little bit of discoloration there? Gone. You probably want to take the outside bit off first. There. Pulls off as one piece. That one is done. Front sight's easy. Oh, there, done. The only one that has any sort of level of complexity to it is this one here. And just there. Hear that crack? I'm just trying to get underneath that. I'm going to show you there. See, boom, just like that, it comes off all as one piece. Flick that out and done. Oh yeah, and last but not least, there. Okay. Oh yeah, one more thing. That's not really a support material thing per se, but I always print the magazine with a brim. It's quite a high piece, and with the high-speed printing, it tends to shake off sometimes. So I'm just going to grab a little chamfer tool here. Just chamfer that. Chamfer it reasonably well. You can use a little knife, of course, too. The reason is having a brim on this will affect your pull to reload. You want this chamfered in a bit. Just want to make extra sure this is nice. There we go. So this is an optional step. And I always do this. I'm going to grab some bits. Now, these are milling bits. These are not drill bits. Drill bits work perfectly as well, but I have a love for little milling machine bits because they create cleaner holes. They are generally dimensionally more accurate. and they are flush on the bottom so you don't get wasted space when you chamfer a hole. So most of these should be the right size. You can see right away, if I spin this backwards, it's still going in. But I do like to just go really quickly around. See a little bit of materials getting removed. These are M2. This is where the little brass bars are going to go in. And I just want to make sure everything fits flush. I'm going to grab an M2.5. This is for the pull to reload switch. You can use your discretion. And the last, again, this is only the parts I'm adding the bars. And I'm going to be using brass bars, but you can use pretty much any material you want. Wood works great, it's very easy to come by, obviously. Even toothpicks work in here. I don't want to add screws because these pieces sandwich together. And this is a very space efficient model. So I'm trying to have the act of joining them together to be what sets in the trigger switch, the pull to reload. And oh, actually one more thing, almost slipped my mind, is the opposite side of this one is actually this little piece here. And you can shove them in too. I mean, you don't have to do this. You can see how little material I'm removing. Depending on how well your printer is calibrated as well, it may be a little tighter. I tried to be a little generous on the models because it's easier to remove material than add material. So if you find you're a little tighter, this may be a requirement instead of an option. So with this all prepped up, we're going to put, oh, I got one more support material bit. Ready? Oh, there you go. That was it. So you can see why I overlooked it. Oh, and this guy. Yeah, just snap that off there. Done. All right, time for the parts kit. First thing we're going to do, open this up. Don't need the sensor bar kit. That's for another video. Get out all of the parts that are going to need to be soldered to. First, we have our infrared positional camera. I'm going to take off these nuts. I'm going to start by trimming them flush. Then I'm going to take a knife and I'm going to lightly roll around, being careful not to cut it. Don't cut all the way through and just pull it off. Or I can just get my handy dandy Knipex cutters. There we go. That is electronic part one. Going to grab our solenoid. Now the solenoid, the prep is very simple, but you got to be very careful. So we want the wires here. I'm just going to take this lightly and just make a little bit of a slit. Doesn't even have to go all the way through. And we're going to pull it down. Going slow with this. Don't want to cut any of the wires or go all the way through. You can also cut out as well. There. What you're looking for is that, for it to go straight out to the side. Then I'm going to measure 11 centimeters from that and cut that flush, strip just a little bit off the end. Now, all of the electronics are in this package. All of the screws are in this package. And all of the wire is in this package. So I'm going to go to the electronics package. I'll put the screws back for now. And pull out all of the things that need to be soldered to. GX16, the joystick, trigger and the fire selector switch, the reload switch, the N20 rumble motor, the A and the B button, the LED, it's a NeoPixel LED, and of course the USB connector. Okay, so the joystick, we're going to have to remove these headers here. We're going to do that by clipping along the third part. Again, then we're going to take the side of the side cutters and just wiggle those out. Like that. That's it. So I'll put this aside. And what we're going to do next is cut all of the wires to the correct length, following the wire guide from the manual. Now, the wires that come with it are white, unless you bought the deluxe kit, which has all of the different colors in it, or unless you're, of course, using your own wire. So I am going to extract the red and the black, but to make this easier, I am going to follow the wire colors in the manual, and I'll be putting the white wire aside. You need a longer ruler for a couple of these. There. So I am going to follow the wire guide and cut all of the wires to their correct color and put them with their component. And then we'll go over and solder it together. All right, starting with the black, I'm going to cut 22 millimeters for the USB. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, black. Put those out with the joystick. Then we've got the camera. That is a 6 centimeter black. The camera just sort of matched the colors on the camera. Then the big one, 41 centimeters. This one will be daisy chained between the A button, the B button, and the foot pedal. And on the Vyper, we're using the foot pedal as the pull to reload, which is the assignable button. Lay that out with one of our 8 millimeter buttons. And then LED, 1 centimeter. So we've got an orange 19 centimeter. That is for the foot pedal, aka the reload. The ground for that is daisy chain. That's the one I just cut. So put it with there. And joystick done, camera done, trigger 16 centimeter yellow. 12 centimeter gray for the selector. 36 centimeter. I do it in gray because I go with A is gray and B is blue. She goes with the USB. Then we've got joystick and B button. B is blue, and that is a big one. That is 35 centimeters. Yeah, goes up with these guys. Then the rumble, which is purple. It's 85. And that requires a black one as well at 75. And the trigger requires a 17 centimeter black. Those two go together. Oh, last one, the thicker one's still in the box. I'm going to show you first how easy it is to strip using a knife and silicone wire. Silicone wire is amazing stuff. Once you go to silicone wire, I doubt you'll ever go back. Just make a nick and just pull it off. That is it. Tiny nick. You don't even need to go all the way in. It's incredibly simple. In fact, I find this method to be easier than even using the very expensive Knipex. So I will just do this for the whole thing. Do it all quickly. Again, I'm not even pushing in. I'm just like barely grazing the wire. That's it. I'm just pulling the top off. As easy as can be. If you want to be a daredevil, check this. Don't even need to strip it. You can just snap it off with a thumbnail. Yes, I have long thumbnails. Tis a maker's friend. The one tool you're always carrying with you.
You try so hard. You try so hard. You try
Okay, so we got all our wires stripped and prepped. Oh, forgot one. I'm gonna get some little trays. They're actually tops, but who's counting? And lay all these out by their category. We'll solder them to the core last. So let me grab my portable soldering station and my helping hands. This soldering station, by the way, is on the Props 3D Thingiverse, one of my favorite things ever. And let's head over and solder this up. All right, I'm gonna start by turning my fan on. Sorry if it's a bit noisy. Next, I'm gonna plug in my soldering iron, preheat it to 390 degrees. I'm going to start with the camera. Now I grabbed this because we have to do a bit of a trim before we solder. Let's feed the camera through. And now at the back here, I'm going to make a little cut around it. Being very gentle not to cut through the wires. I'm going to take that out. I'm actually going to make one more cut. Part way. Easy if you make a light cut and just bend it. I'm just going to pull off the insulation. There we go. And grab the 4 wires and the heat shrink. And we'll line them up. These magnetic Omni Fixo helping hands are a godsend for this kind of stuff. And let me show you something else cool. So if you know PVC wire, if I rest the soldering iron on it, it'll burn. 390 degrees. I'm holding it here. No burn. Nice and hot though. Oh, reconnect that. Silicone wire does not burn, does not melt, does not burn. It is amazing. There we go. Don't worry about interlacing the wires or any of that. Just rest them beside each other. You just have to make sure the solder saturates both wires. And that's it. You get a great joint. The real trick is hold the soldering iron on the wire and then feed it in. Then let it just saturate the wire. That's a very solid joint. You get a little flick up like that. Just clean the tip of your soldering iron. There you go. Now we're going to add heat shrink. Going to hit those with the torch. And set it aside. So next, let's do the A and the B button. One thing with these buttons, though, you got to hit them pretty quick with the soldering iron. That goes the same really with all buttons. You know, there's the internal actuators, and you don't want to apply too much heat to them. And get ready with both of them at the same time, and bloop. That's it. Nice and fast. Flip that around. And do the negative. Again, you want to hit buttons pretty fast. So I'm going to get the solder ready and done. So now I'm going to do the B button. It's going to daisy chain the negative in just a second here. So let's that in. Again, solder is already resting on it, already ready. And put that again very quickly. Now we're going to unscrew. We're going to run the B in the back. Run the nut down. You're going to spin the button, not the nut. So for the last quarter turn, you just want to use a pair of pliers. There. Don't have to over tighten it. Bring off that nut again. The edge is angled to catch the nut. So again, I just want to make sure I got the nut seated. There we go. And just spin it on. And the last quarter turn or so with the pliers. And now I take this black wire and I can use the knife to nick it, but really I'm just going to use my fingers, separate it out and expose a bit of the wire. It's going to be really hard to show you here, but what we're going to do is there's the terminal pass there, and I'm just going to rest the wire against it and put a little bit of solder on. There we go. Nice firm joint. I'm just going to stick all three of these wires through that hole and just run them out the bottom. Going to do the same thing with our camera. Point all those wires nice and straight. And they should come out the bottom, no problem. And that is our front end ready to go. Now let's depin this joystick, which is pretty easy to do. I'll hold it in. I'm going to grab it with a pair of tweezers, heat it up, and slide the pin out. Work our way along. Now we're going to tin all these wires and get them all nice and straight. And tin them in about sets of 3. Have the soldering iron on one side, the solder on the other. There you go. Okay, so I want to start with the black at the COM and just kind of go rainbow down. Just a little bit of solder to each joint. Okay. Always good to add a bit of fresh solder. And to skip the mid button. That's the joystick. Now for the LED, we want to lay it down with the arrow pointing that way. Sorry, flip it around. Arrow actually pointing towards you. And we are going to run the wires over top. So we're going to solder to this side, not to that side. And touching the soldering iron to the pad. This is another point of note. I am using lead-free solder. I find it doesn't work quite as well as the old lead solder, but lead solder has been banned in the EU, and figure go with the times, but man, I do miss lead solder. For the rumble, there is a little positive written on this side. We want to be careful about that. Well, it actually doesn't matter. It just kind of controls the direction of spin, but you know. The rumble, now we're going to do the switches. So there are 3 pins on this switch. This is kind of your common pin. No matter what you want to do, it works for that. It has a C on the top. NO is this pin that's normal open. That's what we want for the small switches. And NC is normal close. That's what we want for here. Normal close means when it's closed, there's no electrical contact. And when we open it, suddenly there's a contact. That's what we want for our magazine. So the magazine will rest against it, and that will activate the switch. And for the trigger and selector, we want it on normal open so that when we push the switch, it will do the thing. So let's just put the switch in. And there we go. You'll notice that some places in the video, I am showing the yellow wire soldered to here. This is wrong. This is correct. Ignore everywhere else you see the yellow wire on this side. We all make mistakes. Now we are only going to solder to the common pin because we will solder the ground wire daisy chained to the trigger later. One we are going to solder into the common wire. And later on, we'll solder into the normal closed pin on the other side. Always get a little confused on this one. So I'm going to go to the Blamcon website and scroll down. That all render in. All right. So we're going to start with red, green, white, black. Easy enough. Very careful about not letting the wires go stray. Those are all solid. See that GX16 there. 3 is red, 4 is white, 5 is green. Oh, if that happens and the solder gets in, it's actually a good thing. Then you press down on the wire, boom. After you get the solder on, you can actually guide the wire in a little bit. And all done. Now we just got to solder these to the core. Now with the Blamcon core, you can see everything's marked on this side, but we want to solder everything through on the other side. Reason being is it mounts this way, and we want to make sure the wires are all on the outside. Now, another thing you'll see in the video is that I soldered this wire underneath here. You can do that. Just be careful you don't rest it against this reset button. I'm going to this time solder it on the outside, but you can do it either way. If you don't want to cover up the Blamcon, do it on the other side. It's up to you. Turn it around. Just work backwards along here. Omnifixo grips. We'll grab our rumble. Going to want to do the same pattern as before. Black, red, green. Let's grab our joystick. Oops, on too many. All good. Pin it and stick it through. And now we're going to want the selector switch. Just grab all the buttons. The selector switch is going to go in the last hole for the joystick. The reason for that, on some Blamcons, just push selects between semi and full auto. On the Vyper, it has a dedicated switch. Now the foot pedal, there is no negative because it's daisy chained. We're going to get the front end, get the B wire. Then we're going to get our trigger switch and take the negative wire from our trigger switch. This is also the negative wire from our selector switch. Then our A button. And our A negative. And our camera, starting with the negative, goes yellow, green, and red. And finally, our solenoid. Make sure they get plenty of solder. There we go. It is all soldered up and ready for assembly. Just plug in the USB. There, let's head back. Home stretch. Let's get some easy parts together. The magazine, the butt, screws mounted. Oops, didn't do the support material on that one. And here is our screw kit. Gonna need a little tray. That should do her. Screws out. Ooh, one little thing. Yep. So this is in every box. It is also on the Props 3D Thingiverse page, a little metric screw sizer. Just put the screw on. That is a 20 millimeter. Easy as that. Oh, also another one we can do. So let's grab the cap head screws first. There we go. The longer ones go through the pick rail, that on there where the screw holes line up. Those together. And then just put that there, not all the way through. And then that can be put aside. This is, oh, what are these? M312s. Lots of M312s. Be sure it's the right way around. There we go. And actually, we can grab our springs now. Want to grab the large springs, then the large button head screws, and all of the guides here. We want to put on guide or a bushing, what you want to call it. Then the other side, and put that on there. Oh, I did the magazine upside down. Flip that around. You can see there's a lip on this side. Thought those screws went awful easier. Should be a bit more resistance because these are 3s and not 4s. Back to where we were. Start that a bit by hand. The threading is actually built right into the 3D model. Makes it really easy. And now this is a preference. You can screw it tighter to make it a little snappier, or you can have it looser for a longer pull and a more manual action to pull it out and push it in. Personally, I'll go for about a middle, about there. It's up to you though. So there is no set point on that. You can kind of feel it and see how much you like it. Let's just put our carbon fiber rods in. Now you may want to add a bit of tape or a tiny bit of glue to the side, depending on your preference. I find this holds pretty good, but I can't predict exactly what diameter your material will be. Maybe you'll have to drill it out. You'll have to buffer it up. Easy either way. And just, yeah, look, that's a great fit. Actually, I may have to drill that one out. Yeah, I'll drill that out. I don't want it to get stuck. So this one may require, or should require, some persuasion to get in. Actually, let me grab a persuader. This one shouldn't go in too easily, or you're not going to have a good recoil action. If you do need to scale it up a bit, there will be no problem with that, but it shouldn't go in super easily. And I'm just going to trim that a bit. We also can't have any raised edges. This is a very precise piece. This, by the way, is a consumable as well. We have torture tested these quite a bit. At Fan Expo, this had 250,000 actuations, and that was on the previous much thinner version of this. And we never had any problems, but not to say over time that it's not possible. We are actually including with the ones we sell, and in the deluxe kits, a CNC version of this. We have absolutely no idea if it is even necessary. But, better safe than to deal with a bunch of disgruntled individuals. But if you are printing this yourself and you do have an issue, just pull this out, stick another one in, and keep on playing. Fan Expo Vancouver is where we first unveiled Blamcon and had a booth. That was 6 months ago, and I'm still using the same test Vyper from it. Never had a problem. So you should check before we move along if these are going to, still a little there. You got to make sure that's all nice and clear. make sure that's a smooth actuation. Oh, it is not. Yeah, you have to tap it in a bit more. Should be a tiny bit of motion there. It should go nicely. Yeah, that one's definitely going to need a bit of trimming. That is a very nice smooth action on that side. And nice smooth action on that side. Let's move along. Let's start to mount the parts. First thing I like to do on this is to screw on the bottom screw from the inside here. Be very careful not to strip the screw, of course. Be gentle with the screws. Now we can start setting in the parts. Now, I said no glue, but optionally 1 drop of glue. It is for the GX16 connector. It just keeps it in place a little bit better. It's totally optional, but I like to do it. So I'm going to get that glue on right now. First, I'm going to get all these wires sorted out. Put everything off to the side. Make sure nothing is entangled in anything else. We're going to have to go back and solder in just a minute. Just for 2 little spots. There, make sure these are all clear. There we go. So I'm going to run this down to there. These wires there, keep that down, that around. Now I'm going to take a little bit of thread locker, again optional. Just put it on the threads here. I'll screw that down a little bit and place it in here where it's not tight, but loose. I'm going to just rotate it there. And then if I do one more turn, it's definitely snug. So I'm going to make it 1 turn back from snug. So that way it's got a little rock to it. So it's not going to jam when I put the other side on. Then I'm going to put, actually I'm going to rotate. Make sure I keep these wires at the right orientation. Core in exactly where it should go. So I'm going to grab the little M2 screws, screw the core in place with those. There, now I can grab the rumble mortar. Purple wire is on top. I'm going to screw it down with 4 M312s. All right, now I'm going to do the selector switch. So we're going to stick the selector switch in from the underside, then take the selector actuator, feed it underneath, and run another 12 millimeter screw to it. Hold that in place while you screw it in. But this piece here has to be very firmly attached to the solenoid. So it is a little bit undersized. You can size it up a bit if you want, but what you're meant to do is just push it in and gently rock it around. Don't rock it a lot. You see, it's less than a degree. Give it a push, and that should work it on perfectly. And that shouldn't come off. This has to be underneath all of the wires. It holds them down after. So we're going to put it over here. Now we want to do one little mod on the trigger switch here, and that is to pinch it where it's flat with the pliers. You see, I just go on, it's a little tab, and now I'm going to rotate that till it's flat. Now the tab, see, goes around the switch. This gives it a much smoother action. Run this behind, around, and I'm going to grab the first of our brass bars, the M2. Put them in the little holes. And then slide the switch down onto that. Make sure they're going underneath and the switch is not resting on them. It should be a nice, easy fit. Now, next bit is we're going to prep for one of our last two solders. And that is the selector switch. The selector switch goes right here like this. And this wire goes to that pole right on top. So what I'm going to do is go about where it connects to the pole. And I'm either going to make a little nick or just pull it apart like that. Get it ready for soldering. Now we want to go down here. So that goes against there. We want to push the camera forward a little bit. We're going to push it out because you may want to add a lens on. And the lens goes out about this much. So we'll give a little bit extra and we want to keep that there. Actually, what we may want to do right now to keep it there is to get our M4 set screw and just run that in now. That's to the very front hole on the underside here. There, that's locked in place. That way it's not going to slide forward. Then we're going to take these wires, we're going to twist them down to here. And at this position, we're going to just quickly heat shrink those, keep them in place. Now we're going to get the M2.5 bars, put them in, and slide those in. Flip the switch out for the moment. There. Keep everything organized. We'll be locking them in place in a minute. There we go. You can get at that. And then we want to pull this one down and place this one round through, back. And then it's going to get soldered onto here. So we're going to pull that through like that. And we're going to solder that onto there. And we're going to solder this onto there. That'll complete our soldering. Done. All right, now we've got that soldered. I'm going to lay the last few wires in. Place the M2 rods in. Then put the switch in. Should slide down the rods nice and easy. Whoops, that goes over top. Then we are going to lay all of the wires in nicely. So we're going to take our solenoid now. And you see this notch that we used before? We're going to place the wires into the notch. And we're going to slide and push it firmly in place. And then the wires are going to go around with the other ones. And everything should look like that, nice and organized. So let's grab the plate and cover up the wiring. We'll lock it in place. Grab two more M312s and screw that down. Slide that through there. Put on a washer. put the trigger in its spot and a washer on the other side. Now we're going to add the spring. This is a thicker spring, so it is quite the stiff trigger pull. In with the kits, I'm putting a milder spring now for a softer pull, but it really depends what you want. The two-stage comes in from the trigger goes down, then it hits the switch, which adds a subtle pressure to it, and then the click, which is just like a brake. It is a very light, easy to use trigger. All right, so let me slide it over so you can see this. We're going to mount the joystick. Going to grab these two mini buttons and put them in place. If it's a bit stiff, which it is here, shouldn't be, but if it is, I'm going to you can either take a knife, go around the edge a little bit, or I'm going to take an 8mm end mill. Again, end mills are amazing for this work. Just going to rub it in there. Just going to clean that out just a little bit. Should just drop in. Now, you can just take the joystick, making sure the buttons are going the right way, place it in the right spot, and take some M3/6s, just screw it down. There. Now I can take the LED. Got to be a little careful with how you put that down. Put the LED diffuser in there. That should be rather tight. Put the LED with the wires going through the channel. Then place the cover on top, being aware that the cover has a gap here. Then screw the cover down. Going to go around, lightly tighten it. Don't want to exert too much pressure, but it should keep it nice and steady. All right, now I'm going to take the heat shrink, move it close and about 75%, and torch that. All right, we're now ready to put it together. Actually, let me transfer these over. It's nice to have something to boost it up a bit. And take all of the nuts, add them into their slots. Take a quick look, see if I didn't forget anything. So now we're going to take the charging handle and set it in place. Okay, now the very last thing we do before we put it together is make sure the magazine clicks to reload. We do that by taking our pliers. We're going to put a straight bend in the switch to bend it up. Now we're going to take the top of the switch and bend it down. There. So it is nice and flat there. So now, when this is closed, you hear a click. Make sure these bushings are set up. Make sure the charging handle is there. All the wires are unobstructed. Now, also these wires here, 9 times out of 10 for me, they go in smoothly. As long as they hook around the trigger, there's no problem at all. If they do hook around the trigger, just push them up a bit. That's the purpose of adding the heat shrink here. So, just firmly and smoothly push it down, and that should all just click into place. Easy peasy. Flip it over, and let's add the screws. So the two 25mm go into the body, front and back. Then grab the 3 mid-size screws. They are not exactly the same. One is a tiny bit shorter. So you can see it's this one. It goes into the back of the grip here. This one goes into the front. So run those two 25mm first. I'm going to screw them in firmly, but not within an inch of their life, you know? This thing holds together very well. Then finally, this little 8mm here. There we go. So pull the reload, selector switch selects, trigger triggers, charging handle actuates. It'll only work smoothly when we add into the back here, this spring. And when we do that, we should be able to pull it back. And off it goes. So now let's secure this by putting the back on. Okay, now we want to push these screws we put in before up till they're flush. And we're going to snap in the gas piston. First, push it forward so it's all the way in. Then when it's level, just snap the back in. You require a bit of force. It will go in. There. Now, you just run the screws in. And finally, we're going to add this little set screw. So this set screw is optional, and I'm debating on dropping it from the model, and it may not be in the version you get. As you screw this set screw in, be really careful not to strip it. I'm even going to tap it really quick. Yeah, the problem with these little M3 set screws is the head is so small that it can sort of pedal out under too much force. So I'll leave it to you if you want to install it or not, but if you do, I'd highly recommend threading it a bit. The camera's forward, so I'm not going to go into the camera. It's not a problem. So now it is tapped. I'm going to run this in. I'm going to run it in too deep, just till it's flush plus about 0.5 millimeter. That's enough. If you want to see if it's good, simply back this set screw out and then see if you can turn the barrel. You can't because the barrel's locked, and that is actually the purpose of the set screw. So actually, I am going to push this in. We're going to take it out a bit later. I warn you that don't push it in too far. I can still sort of pull it out, but let's get this completed first, and then take it over to the computer and set the camera orientation. So I forgot this one before, so I'm cutting this in. I had one screw left over. So we're going to have to take this off later, but we want to see it complete for the moment, right? And now for the sights. Add the rear sight. Yeah, I'm going to tap this guy too. Whoops. The best way to add this set screw is to do it in flush, then tap that both sides. Personally prefer the open sights to the peep sights, but to each their own. So I'm going to go with the open sight. So I'm going to tighten that down. So now I can move that to wherever I want. Tighten it up and move it, or I can loosen that up a little bit. Then back the sets, holding it down, back the set screw out, and it should go neatly into the track. And then when I tighten it again, there you go. That enforces it to be extremely flat. Remember, you don't really need to adjust for windage on light guns because you can just calibrate it to the right and the left. Last thing we got to do for this, put that in there, or last screw we have to do for this, and screw that in. There is a high sight and a low sight. I prefer the low sight. You do you. Both work fine. There. Just screw that in till it's inside, and the last, you just have to slide this on. I imagine I'll need to, yeah, I'm going to drill this because you can get it stuck. So I'll grab a drill bit. Being in Canada, I'm using a 13/32 rather than a 10 millimeter. It is very hard to get long metric drill bits here. Or I believe that's the size. Yeah, that's size. It's only a tiny amount I'm drilling out. And there we go. Got ourselves a fully functional Blamcon Vyper light gun. Pull to reload magazine works. Charging handle works. All the buttons work. All we got to do is take this over to the computer, plug her in, and play us some games. Let's go. So now we got our gun all built and ready to go. We've got the final step, and that is to calibrate the camera. We don't really know what the orientation is, but the firmware will tell us. So the first thing we got to do is take off the foregrip by removing the 3 screws. Okay, so we're just going to take the foregrip off, grab our Allen key, and loosen the set screw we put in before. And then we have to plug it in. So on my arcade machine, I have the 12 volt already running to a 5.5 millimeter. So I'm just going to use this adapter. Generally, all you would need to do is plug your 12 volt directly into the Blamcon breakout box and you're good to go. Plug it into here and then just plugging in the USB cable. Then taking the GX16, I'm going to plug it into the light gun and point it at the screen. And now what you should see, unless we are 1 in 360, is that it is off. So we're going to go off screen and hold down the B button for 3 seconds. It should vibrate and then it should turn blue. This means you're in the calibration menu. So from here, we're going to shoot and shoot. And then we can see here, it's got 3 colors. Red, meaning it sees no sensors. Yellow, meaning it sees some of the sensors. And we're not going to see green because it's not oriented correctly. We saw before it was going opposite. So we're going to rotate the camera a full 180. And then we are going to point the camera at the screen. And we're going to rotate the gun gently until we see green. So I see green here. So what I'm going to do is pinch the camera, rotate the gun to level, and then give it a little bit of a wiggle until it's green. Once it's green and flat, we are going to slide the camera back in, being careful to maintain that orientation, and we are going to tighten the set screw. Now when we point at the screen with the light gun nice and level, we get green. That means we're done. So we can replace the foregrip. Then, as you can see, the cursor is in the middle of the screen. We are going to shoot all of the points. And that's it. The point of aim is bang on, and we're ready to play some games. I'm going to start by playing our own game, Blamcon Shooting Gallery. This game is completely free on Steam, and I'll be putting out a new version soon for the Vyper. It's actually designed for the Stallion 6-shooter, so we only get 6 shots in the corner, but I will do a Vyper version. The sights off. So I hope you'll take the plunge and build a Blamcon Vyper yourself. I look forward to bringing a lot more Blamcons to you in the future and a lot more Props 3D awesomeness. I'd like to give a huge shout out to the Patreons who help make all this possible. Andrew Gergen, Big Homie, CC, Chef J, Fernando Diaz, James Hargis, Chris Coolmod of chriscoolmod.com, Matthew Klabish, Philip Daniel of the Light Gun Lunatics group on Facebook, Stephen Barsom, Thomas Cooper, and all the Patreons and the crawl that follows. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next video.